I've recently felt really at home in a practice room downstairs. At first, I was really intimidated because they were not soundproof at all, and I sort of felt like everyone could hear me, which they can. But there's something about a practice room that's just very quiet, and like when you're not playing, obviously, but that's just very quiet. It's very small and compact, and you just feel like you can be yourself, and like no one's gonna look in and like see what you're doing, and it's just my own space. And so that's the only place where I'm completely alone and I can do whatever, which is make music. When I was younger, I played the violin because apparently that's what all international school children start with. Second semester of my sixth grade, I switched instruments because my music teacher suggested it to me because she needed more violists. I just loved the sound of the instrument, first of all. It's so deep and rich, but also it's not the cello, so it's portable. And there's so many different things you can do with it, and like it's not squeaky like the violin, but the register is so like why it's just an amazing instrument. Like composing is a thing that I got into when I was in my sophomore year because I was told to compose a couple of pieces for my IGCSE music class. The feeling of being able to play something that came out of your brain it's a different realm of like a feeling of like accomplishment, and there's just like this euphoria that comes to me when I like write different melodies or like play different like or improvise. Some people talk their feelings out, some people read, but I really suggest like composition, even humming a tune or like singing something randomly. I feel like that's just another way of like expressing yourself, and it's just a different feeling.
I'm originally from Poland, and growing up we would move to a new country every 2 or 3 years. And so as a kid, I think I considered home to be either like the physical location where we're living or Poland. And now I feel like home changes depending on who I'm talking to as well, like who's asking me the question. But I think really for me right now, home is kind of the mountains. That's where I feel the best and the most free. I love to hike, I guess. That's the biggest thing. Just hike and explore. I love going alone. I feel like that gives me a lot of time to just think and be present and enjoy everything around me.
Home to me, I guess means sort of a lot of different things. I think because I sort of moved around a lot when I was younger, home is less connected to a place, and it's more of a time and a place and the people that were there at that time. I was born in DC and had sort of a very American first 5 years, but then we moved to the Dominican Republic. And that was just sort of like a completely different chapter or section of my life. Home very much meant like the house that we were in. Much of my life was sort of lived through those four walls. And then we moved to India, and there it was very much not about the house, and it was about sort of everything that was around. We did a lot of travel while we were there because they sort of wanted to take advantage of being in a place like that. So home sort of meant all of the people that we met and all of the things that we saw, but there was sort of like a sense of exhilaration and wildness that sort of defined that period for me. And then finally, Vermont became a lot smaller again. It was all about sort of everything that I could touch and everything that I could see around me. The lack of consistency was hard for me and has made me a less consistent person, particularly in my relationships with people. I'm not in touch with anyone from my childhood, basically, and I don't have any friends from before 8th grade. And it's interesting to me to meet people who, have baby pictures with people they're still best friends with and who've sort of seen each other grow up like that, because sometimes I feel like I'm not a real person because there's very few people to corroborate the fact that like I existed. And it just means that I don't know how to have long-term relationships. And that's something that I'm trying really hard to learn, particularly because a lot of the people here are people I really hope to have long-term relationships with and I hope to know for, the rest of my life. But I've never been able to do that before because, if I'm just someone who has to leave after a certain amount of time, then I can't be left. I'm definitely glad that we made the moves that we did and when we did, but I have a lot of mixed feelings about, whether that's a life that I want or not. It gets around 3 or 4 years, I like notice myself getting in these patterns that I need to make some sort of drastic change, whether it's like relationships change or I go somewhere new or I try something completely different. There's sort of like an internal clock for me that starts ticking down. Motion is a good thing, but it doesn't have to be drastic. And stillness is a good thing, but it doesn't have to be stagnant.
Where is home for me? There's a lot of places that I consider home. I can go in chronological order if that makes sense. So I was born in Mandaluyong City in the Philippines, which is in this like big cluster of this world we call Manila. That's the capital. Literally like across the street from my grandparents. I lived in my mom's home as a child, so I don't know, I thought that was pretty cool. I've been back in the Philippines and I've like flipped through my mom's old comic books and it's like really sweet and fun and just like nostalgic. And then my parents decided to like on a whim like move to America. I don't know if you know a thing or two about immigration policy in America, but back in the early 2000s, the government was recruiting a lot of like overseas English teachers. They were just like looking for like cheap, fast teachers to like serve in underserved public schools. So that's where my mom came in, literally saw an ad in the newspaper that was like, hey, you want to come to America? And she was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna try something new. I think we're gonna go to America. Like, fuck the family business, we're just gonna go. Brownsville, Texas is such a strange, like, little world in its own. It's a very immigrant-heavy town. And so I grew up in a community that was very much like, these are the Filipinos and we're all gonna stick together and we're all gonna hang out with each other all the time. So like I grew up speaking Tagalog, like watching a lot of Filipino TV, eating like only Filipino food all the time. No one ever greeted each other with like a handshake or anything. It was always like you kiss somebody when you see them. Living in a border town, that was like my segue into like learning Spanish and like making other immigrant friends and like children of immigrant friends. So home to me, it was a very like brown community. I think I very much tried to play out my life and like my decisions in a way that balances like this very like American like work hard, play hard, and do whatever gets you at the top of the food chain or whatever, versus like the Filipino mindset of like be humble, be quiet, and like everything that you do is for your family. I have been trying really hard to bridge those two. Oh, wow. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I'm doing it very well. I like try really hard to like stay humble, and that like translates in like the way that I speak, kind of like the way that I dress, and like how I spend time and like how I care for my friends. So when I was 17 years old, I moved to Medford, Massachusetts to go to Tufts University, which is also home to me. It was like such a strange transition. I don't think I had ever like shaken anyone's hand like meeting somebody first, so that was like new and fun. I have a firm handshake now. Pretty proud of it.
The bigotry in my hometown was I mean, I guess it's very typical of what you would find in a small southern town. There's a lot of racism, a lot of anti-LGBT. I would listen in on conversations in a lot of classrooms when I was in high school and even in middle school, and people would use really derogatory terms against LGBT members. People kept saying that trans people aren't real, like that there's something wrong with them, it's a mental illness, and then anytime they would bring up anybody who was non-binary, they would make fun of it and say things like, I actually heard a kid say in one of my classes, oh, I sexually identify as a toaster. And then everybody, including the teacher, laughed. To handle it, I just basically kept quiet because there was nothing I could do to stop it. You're not going to change anybody's mind that way. And, I mean, for my own well-being, I kind of had to stay quiet. Coping with it, I did a really bad job because essentially what I did was I tried to deny my own identity. I think the only advice that I can give to somebody growing up in a community that's biased against them is to just remember that that's where you live, and not everywhere else is like that. There are other places where you can go and you will be accepted, and you're probably not going to change anybody's mind there, so you just kind of have to hope that you can find a way out, because that's really all you can do.
I started dancing when I was 6 years old. Since I was able to walk, my mother always had this thing where she was cleaning the house and she would put on music, and then she'd just start dancing, so then I would just try to imitate her. It was very cute. My mother did like the whole single mother type of thing. And ballet here, it's like pretty expensive. So I was only able to do ballet for 2 years. And then I got back to it when I was around 10 or 11, and I started doing Colombian folkloric dancing. Salsa, tango, bachata, anything I could get my hands on. The stage also feels like home. Usually when I do have to speak, I get somewhat nervous, but dancing is just another way of like showing and portraying what I'm feeling. I'm not a very social person, so then just dancing takes the lead. It's just me on the stage trying to emit my emotions without having to clearly state them. A lot of the dancing that I've been doing, it's just a dancing that reminds me of my roots and of my heritage, just because my family is Colombian. It takes me back to when I was very young, when I was dancing with my mom. I mean, the funny thing is that when they see me dancing just randomly and they see me salsa dancing, they're just like, oh, you really know how to dance. Are you like Latina or something? So it kind of shows off my heritage. Maybe you're not doing the basic like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, but you're actually putting your like style and like flavor into it. So they're just like, oh, that's cool. Like, where'd you learn? Where are you from? So it's a conversation starter. It makes my mom very happy to see me dancing, just because she knew I could do any type of dancing, but sticking to the salsa, to the tango, to the bachata, to the cumbia, whatever it may be, it makes her feel as if she did a good job with me. In Colombia, we have a saying that if you live abroad, you need to have a son or a daughter, like native from the country, to pass down the heritage. She's like, it's as if you were born in Colombia.
I'm on the train through the ocean state, making my way to the garden, to the garden. Towns whiz past me, but they're not the same. Nothing's the same for you, isn't it? Suburban nightmares flying left and right, but up ahead, sitting drenched in light, I see greener pastures, green